Play ball! This is Janet from the West End Library with my monthly book review. The West End Library is located in Laurelton, Pennsylvania at the west end of Union County. It's that time of year when schools and summer leagues begin spring practice and playing games. You can drive through any town in America any day of the week and see a baseball game being played, whether an organized league game, family outings, social events, or some neighborhood kids just getting together because they can. The Magic Tree House series of books covers all kinds of different topics and time frames. Having been one of those kids who spent most summers up in a neighborhood tree house, the idea of a magic tree house is absolutely enchanting and one any kid, me, would dream about. Annie and Jack have discovered a tree house in a wood in Frog Creek. They find that the tree house is filled with books, and they discovered they could travel anywhere in time and history by simply pointing to a picture in a book. A big day for baseball begins with Annie and Jack trying to decide if they want to go for baseball tryouts. After not playing well the year before, Jack was a little hesitant about going to tryouts. As they were discussing whether or not to go, a ball came flying through the air and landed on the yard in front of them. It was a baseball. They realized that the ball was probably a sign from Morgan Le Fay, a magical librarian who had owned the Magic Tree House. So off to the tree house they go. A history of baseball book was laying there with a bookmark in it. The bookmark was placed in an article about Ebbets Field, Brooklyn, New York, April 15th, 1947, as well as 2 baseball caps. There was a poem written on the bookmark in the book regarding it being a big day for baseball and how magical the caps were. The poem also mentioned the ball with the name, but there was no name on the ball. So pointing to the picture of Brooklyn, the Magic Tree House did its thing, with the wind blowing and the tree house beginning to spin. When the spinning stopped, their clothes had changed into baseball uniforms with Bat Boy stitched on the front of the uniforms. The poem on the bookmark had said, as long as they wear the caps, people will see them as they wanted to be seen. As they head off to find Ebbets Field, passing people as they leave the park, Annie and Jack asked a group of kids which direction to go. 2 of the youngest children, Olive and Otis, ran after them to show them a shortcut to the field. The children got them to Ebbets Field, where a huge crowd was gathering, and it was being advertised as opening day at the field. As they went to go in and realized they didn't have the admission fee, a security guard yelled at them that they were late and to get into the field. Because they were wearing Bat Boy uniforms and wearing the magical hats, they were able to get to the dugout of the Boston Braves. On their way to Ebbets Field, Annie and Jack began noticing different things, the types of cars on the roads, the way people were dressed, and that in the stand, one half were filled with white people and the other with black. Then they saw a black Dodgers player who was signing autographs on baseballs. They had no idea who he was. Annie and Jack began getting everything set up for the beginning of the game. It was as if they knew automatically what needed to be done. The magic hats were helping them be seen as they were to be seen and as they wanted to be seen. As the game commenced, and when the Dodgers were up to bat, there was heckling and shouting, making comments, "Get him out of here, don't let him back," and other not very nice words. At first, Jack thought they were shouting at him, but when he turned around, he realized they were yelling at the black Dodgers player. When the next batter hit a ball to the outfield, Jack went to get it, and the wind blew his hat off. A kid from the stands jumped onto the field and took his hat. Well, at that point, he was not seen as a Bat Boy any longer, and the security guards were coming after him. Finding Annie, she put her cap on Jack's head and immediately turned back into Bat Boy. After taking the magic hat from them, they turned back into Annie and Jack, and they were both escorted out of the field. After leaving the field, they were upset and lamenting that they didn't learn anything about being a great baseball player. They thought that's the lesson they were to learn. The 2 children who showed them how to get to Ebbets Field, Otis and Olive, saw them and told them how they had seen Jack turn back from being a Bat Boy to Jack. Olive and Otis grabbed Annie and Jack and started running through the streets, dodging streetcars. Olive and Otis told Annie and Jack that dodging streetcars was how the Dodgers got their name. Olive and Otis took Annie and Jack into a house where their grandmothers and great-grandmother lived. Because Olive and Otis were black, so were their grandmothers. The grandmothers commented that this was the first any white people were in their house. The grands were sitting around a radio listening to the game. Soon Dodger number 42, the back player that had been booed at the ballpark, was up to bat and with his great playing pulled the Dodgers ahead in the score. Olive and Otis's grands were shouting and cheering the player, and Annie and Jack did not understand why. They realized that the players they were cheering for was Jackie Robinson, the first black player on a white Major League Baseball team. After hearing the final score for the game, Annie and Jack realized why this was a big day for baseball. They felt it was now time to give the ball away that had landed in their yard. They tried to give it to Olive and Otis, but they said they've got plenty of baseballs that they get when they fly over the ballpark fence. Olive and Otis took Annie and Jack back to the hall to another room and introduced them to their great-great-grandmother, who had a basket filled with baseballs sitting next to her on the floor. Due to her older age, their great-great-granny had been born a slave. She asked if the crowd cheered for Jackie Robinson at the ballpark. Annie and Jack told her that not all of the crowd had cheered for him. Great-great-granny made a comment that by Jackie Robinson ignoring the comments, that meant he walked toward the good. At that point, Annie and Jack realized that they should give the baseball from their yard to Olive and Otis's great-great-grandmother. At that point, something very magical happened with the baseball. Keep in mind that they arrived in Brooklyn by way of the Magic Tree House. Annie and Jack realized it was time for them to leave and found their way back to the Magic Tree House. Once they were back to their own town, Jack took the book, The History of Baseball, that had the bookmark in it and began reading about Jackie Robinson. At Ebbets Field in Brooklyn on April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play on a Major League Baseball team in America. His first game was playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. At that point, Annie and Jack realized that instead of just reading about Jackie Robinson, they actually lived the day that history was made. They read how Jackie Robinson was a big inspiration to the civil rights movement. Watching Jackie Robinson and the strength and courage he showed by being the first African American to play on a major league team encouraged Annie and Jack to try out for baseball. I remember as a child, my father telling me about Jackie Robinson's story. My father grew up when that piece of history was made. Just a few months ago, out here at the West End, there had been a billboard showing a picture of Jackie Robinson, and the title of the billboard was, "And Here's to You, Mr. Robinson." What a great tribute to not only a remarkable baseball player, but also an amazing person.